Yo, 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 what's good? It's Bear in the building. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Kueen Talk. For those that are new, welcome. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like button, and leave a comment on what you think of today's episode. Today's special guest is a mixed race woman from Cheyenne, Ute Territories, known as Denver, Colorado. She graduated from California Institute of the Arts with a bachelor's in dance and choreography. She balances her work in nonprofit activism and entertainment, teaching dance and Pilates while pursuing a wellness business to promote global well being. Please help me welcome Alexis Saenz.
Yes,
Thank you for joining me.
hello. Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having this podcast. I think it's super needed for our community. Yeah, my name is Lex. My pronouns are she, they. Originally from Colorado and now out here in Lava Land, known as Tongva Territory. And yeah, I'm super excited to be on this podcast with you, honestly.
Yeah, I thank you. Like again, like I said before we even start, but just like for coming on here, joining me. I seen your TikTok that said queer people, BIPOC people of color, if you see this, and like you had this thing to where it was like a trend to where like, and I was
Mm,
like, oh, definitely, like you're trying to hit up the same people I'm trying to hit up. Like, yes, I got to get you on here. What made you like put that post out there?
yes, so I saw this like follow train thing going around on TikTok, and I jumped on it, and then another one popped up, like during Pride Month that was like LGBTQ, and I was like, oh hell yeah, and I jumped up on that, and then I was getting all these follows. I mean, my count was a lot more smaller than it is now, but I was like, I feel like I want to do this for like 30 plus and LGBTQ still, but do it for my Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And yeah, and create that space because I didn't see anyone doing that. And yeah, I just felt like a lot of the people that I was getting from follows were like a lot of white people, honestly. And I was like, yeah, this is not my crowd, to be completely honest. So I was like, let me just make one. Like, I don't see anyone doing this because I tried to look it up just to make sure no one else was like doing it before I did that. And I gave credit to the original creator of like the LGBTQ follow train because I kind of used similar wording and like the way they did it. So, because I think credit is like another thing with TikTok that you have to like I want to make sure I give credit to people, especially for building on different ideas and stuff like that. Sometimes it can be hard though, but yeah. So that's kind of where it stemmed from. And so I did it and it blew up and I was low key expecting it to go somewhere, but I didn't think I was gonna get the response that I got, and like
Yeah,
people using it as a sound and like so many people going into the comments and like creating friendship from it and like having full blown conversations back and forth
right.
in the comments and it was so cute like and so sweet and I'm so happy I did that and like I have
Yes,
a whole community now from it and I'm like okay yeah this is way better like for you page is so much better and I
yes.
hope
I
that everyone that jumps on that train, all of our full you pages are better. That's what I'm hoping for.
yes, I agree with that for like everything you said. Like that is why like Queen Talk was created too. Like I'm from El Dorado, Kansas. It's a small, I was the only one that looked like me that graduated in my graduating class. So I was like, I'm searching for that too. Like I'm surrounded by a lot of white queer people, but I needed that too. So I'm glad you popped up on my For You page. It's working. Like the post, TikTok is TikToking and it's doing its thing. And like you said, like the conversations underneath there, like I'm seeing them too. And I even joined on there. I said where I was from and everything too. So it's
Yes,
really good.
good.
It's really needed. So I love that you did that and always give credit, like you said, because there's a lot of
Mhm.
people taking things from people. But
Yeah.
what brought you to LA? Was it your dance?
Yeah, so I I always knew that I was gonna leave Colorado when I was 18. Like I knew I had to I had to go somewhere else if I wanted to, pursue a career in dance. Um, Colorado has grown a lot since I've moved, but yeah, I came out here for dance. It was, for dance, it's either like back then, it was either New York or LA, maybe Florida or maybe Atlanta. Nowadays, you definitely could have like a career out of Florida and Atlanta as well. So it's like those are like the top four places I would say if you're looking like to dance commercially. So yeah, I chose LA because I'm not about the winter snow no more. Like in Colorado, I was like, I'm done with the weather, so I chose LA, and it's also a lot closer to Colorado. And yeah, I went to California Institute of the Arts, got my bachelor's of fine arts in dance and choreography. So I went to school first, and a lot of folks in the commercial industry, they like moved out here and kind of just started pursuing the commercial dance scene. Whereas my first 4 years out here, I was committed to going to college and all of that. So yeah, that's what brought me out here to Los Angeles, and I haven't left ever since.
What was your upbringing like in Colorado? Was there a lot of people of color? I mean, sometimes when I just left Denver and I didn't see that many people of color. But what was your like upbringing, high school, elementary? What did that look like?
Yeah, I feel like so I lived in Aurora,
Okay.
Colorado, and you know, in my upbringing, like in as far as like schooling and stuff, there was always like a good of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. However, like when we moved to Aurora, it was like very. I mean, I always lived in Aurora, but I think about we moved a lot throughout Aurora in the time that I was born until like I moved for college. But we lived like in different parts of Aurora throughout my time there, and it was like more suburb areas, but even with that there was still like a good mix. But for middle school and high school, I went to school at a performing arts middle school and high school, and because it was through the city of Denver, like they had to have like way more of like a mix than like let's say like Cherry Creek School District, which is like a more what they call like prestigious. I don't know about all
Mm.
that, but whatever.
Yeah.
I there was obviously a lot more diversity, like more in the downtown area. So even though I went to school, I went to elementary school like around my house. Like for middle school and high school, I was going, downtown. It was considered Denver, but it was like right on the cusp of Aurora and Denver. And I have siblings, so I have an older sibling and then a younger brother, and they went to different schools. So like I ended up my first year going to Denver School of the Arts, living with my grandma for like an entire year because she lived closer to that school.
Mm.
So, from what I remember, Denver School of the Arts was, you know, very white in the sense of like the teachers and like the education and like trying to be like this prestigious art school. You know what I mean? But as far as like the youth and like the folks that I was surrounded by, I remember it being pretty like a mix, and
Good.
um so that was nice. But yeah, no, now Denver is not that. It is not that at all. Um, and as far as like the dance community goes, like the places that I danced at, they were more white spaces as well.
Mm.
So like, dancing at school versus dancing after school, like 'cause at the dance studios I went to, it was very, very different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's kind of like the answer to that. But Denver is definitely not that now. It's very
Right.
white.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. Like I said, I just got back from there literally yesterday or the day before. The day before. And it was very much that like every met a lot of queer people. Like I had my Queen Talk shirt on and so like I mean, I kind of look like I'm part of the community. But they would tell me that they are, so I knew that they were, but they were just like all white people. But yeah, it that's why Queen Talk, and that's why you're out here on the For You pages trying to spread the word. When it comes to like dance now, do you find it hard to get gigs or easy to get gigs? Just like being a person of color, do you find like people try to find this certain look in the dance world?
Yeah, I mean, it depends because like a while back, like I feel like, there was like a certain beauty standard, right? But now I feel like it kind of switched in the industry where now like obviously brands and people are becoming more aware, and I feel like right now Black, Indigenous, and people of color, like it's our time to shine,
Good,
honestly, in like
good.
the dance industry, which is nice. Um, and beautiful. But yeah, I mean, in the past, I mean, regardless, always they are going based off of look, height. Like, I don't get to a lot of auditions because of my height. I'm very short.
Mm,
So,
mm,
and like sometimes, they're looking for ballerinas or they're looking for like a certain type of style, and that maybe, I mean, yeah, I grew up doing ballet, but I'm not your typical like ballet type, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So yeah, it definitely like there's always some sort of restrictions or what they're looking for, and like sometimes they typecast, which can also be very like cutthroat. Like that's where they'll line us up in a line before we even audition, or they see our talent and they just go down the line and say, please stay, please go, please stay, please go, based
oh
on what they
dang,
need. Yeah, so it's like pretty like it's intense, and you just sometimes just have to look at it like it's had to give me a very thick skin. So yeah, I was just talking about this today with a friend of like setting boundaries with like certain other things outside of dance, because I already have to go through so much within the dance industry and like things of that nature, or when it comes to like movement things outside, like I teach Pilates. I, also do some other things movement wise for my mental health. And I've had to set up boundaries around that because I don't get to do that within, the dance industry sometimes, which can lead to burnout a lot of the time.
yeah,
So yeah, I think that's super important to have outside of like these places where you can't really control it. I mean, some of us in the dance community are working towards creating a better community because there's not really a dance union that protects
mm,
us. Like there's SAG-AFTRA, which is more so for like movies and bigger commercials where they are protected. But a lot of the dance jobs are not through SAG-AFTRA. So we're not protected in most cases, and
yeah,
we're not getting paid what we deserve. And like, yeah, there's like artists such as like Taylor Swift and Victoria Monet who like are actively like fighting for us to get paid what we should get paid. And like,
mm-hmm,
speaking outwardly like Victoria Monet did at the BET Awards, which is like we need more people in the industry in these
yeah,
upper parts like also advocating for us. But I just went into seven different directions. But to
yeah.
answer your
No, it's okay.
question,
I was literally thinking of that Victoria Monet moment because I watched that and seeing that she like did say like they don't get paid enough, and like you guys are in a lot of music videos and stuff like that too, so pay your worth. And I honestly didn't know you guys didn't get paid that much. So you would
yeah,
think for the hours
no,
and times and choreography that it get pushed together that you would get paid a decent amount.
no. And like yeah, especially for some of these bigger artists, when I tell people who I've worked with, they're like shocked when I tell them how much I made for those different jobs. It's crazy. And yeah, I think like something that I also like moving that's something like even the fact that like the rate hasn't changed within the last few years is insane, when like
Right.
the rate of living especially in Los Angeles is absolutely insane.
Hmm.
So yeah, we really rely on people from our community and like people with bigger names like Victoria Monet, like these people to like advocate and help with us like being able to be paid what we should get, because dancers are like the reason why these songs and these things blow up. And you're seeing like
Exactly.
people from TikTok who
Hmm.
don't have any dance experience like getting paid thousands and thousands of dollars for doing like a 15-minute TikTok dance that, a lot of folks can do. And then, I went to school for 4 years to study dance and I'm getting paid, you know,
Yeah.
exposure. Like I can't eat exposure. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
it's
that's
just
good.
wild.
Exposure. Eating it. I like the way you put that. Eating exposure just to get out there, get seen.
Yeah,
That's
nah.
all. That's all you're getting. And you mentioned just like other things that you have to do, like you do the Pilates, you do the wellness and mental health. What does that look like? Like, what do you do for like your wellness and mental health?
Yeah, so Pilates for me is like another way to keep up with my dance training. I am very grateful for how I grew up. My mom owned a dance studio. So I grew up in a dance
Oh,
studio
okay.
and we lost it in 2005. And then we ended up going to another studio, which helped my mom and put us on scholarship, which was nice. And at that studio, if you were on competition team, like competing, you were required to do Pilates. So I started Pilates at a young age, like at 14,
Hmm.
and very grateful for that because Pilates is so good with helping with physical therapy and longevity and like just really good for dancers. There's a whole story I could go into behind that, but I'm gonna leave that there.
So I don't need to
Um,
laugh. I tried Pilates one time.
tell me about it. I want to hear. I want to
It
hear
just
this.
my body just didn't move the way it needed to move, and I haven't been back. Like I was just
No,
like
you gotta stick with it. You gotta
I was
stick
like
with it.
this big body bare built ain't Pilates, like it wasn't for me. They were trying
Oh
to,
no.
but she
Yeah,
also said she was like, you got to give it another try, and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
you
and I
definitely gotta
yeah.
give it another try, and also go to like classes that like are more inclusive. Because like, yeah, in the Pilates industry, again, it's very white, and like I there's like at least out here in LA, there's like a lot more inclusive spaces with Pilates now than there were like back then. So yeah, I would definitely say give it a try or look up studios that are like BIPOC led because there
Yeah.
are a few out there for sure.
Hmm. Yeah,
But I'm
I
sorry that was your first experience.
yeah.
That's
No,
horrible.
yeah. It was just my body just I don't know, I need to stretch a lot more than what I do. I'll say that for sure.
I I hear that. I hear that. Well, if you ever come to LA, you're gonna have to take a class with me because I
Oh,
feel like you would leave feeling
definitely.
good. Okay,
Definitely.
but to go back to your question of like what I do for like my mental health, like Pilates was always to support my dance, right? So
Hmm.
while it gives me the benefits for my mental health of like working out and all that, same with dance. I would use them still as outlets, and like I said, I exercise them so much that so that I would get burnt out, and it wouldn't have the same effect as it did like when I was younger. I just go to a studio and dance, and I feel better. As
Yeah.
I've gotten older and I've done it my whole life, like I had to find other outlets. But it always for me has been movement based. So I like to sometimes try like different types of forms of exercise, like I am not a weightlifting gal and I'm
Uh,
tiny. So like,
I seen you
I
out there
definitely
running on TikTok. That
yeah, so I was just about to bring that up, but like I like to interrupt with like different workout classes. But my two biggest forms of movement that are just for my mental health are running and yoga. So like I've taken classes at different yoga studios and I have a lot of friends who are yoga teachers and they've told me like you should get yoga certified. This could be another form of income or da 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 da. And I'm like, no, like I have a very firm boundary with yoga of that is for my mental health. And I think we have to create those boundaries. Same thing with running. Like I've had people be like, oh, are you going to run a 5K? Are you training for something? Are you just, nope. I don't count how far I run or the time. Like it's just for me. Like I don't care how far I run. I just need to run to help clear my mental health. I used it as a tool for my mental health back in 2018 when I was going through a breakup, and I was like, I need to do something because dance is not working anymore. And I just went to the park every day and I just ran. Sometimes it would be very long and I'd be like, oh, dang, I did a lap, but I wasn't counting and I wasn't timing it, but I have to set up those boundaries within different types of movement for me, because otherwise it gets to be another place where I have to set boundaries and expectations. And like, when you do that, it loses its like abilities to help you cope with certain things. Like, so yeah,
that's nice. You can just get out there and just run, just to run. And it's a good perspective though too, like you said, of not putting an expectation on it and just getting out there and doing it. It does make it a lot easier. It does, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like, when we sit here and like create expectations and like goals in certain, like you have to have goals in certain instances. Like I'll set a goal for running, and for yoga, like, oh, I want to go like 2 times this week, or I want to run 3 times this week. But other than that, that's where I cap it,
That's good. And that's good. Like you're taking care of your mental health and your wellness. And like you mentioned, boundaries. Like those are the 3 things like to definitely live by, like especially boundaries. And we didn't talk about it, like you didn't say it in introduction. Like, how do you identify in the community?
Yeah, so for me, it's also like I've always been an ally when I was younger to the LGBTQ community. Like I grew up going to Trax. If you know Denver, Trax nightclub is like the LGBTQ gay bar. Oh my God, you gotta go the next time you're there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like I grew up going there a lot when I was younger. But so I always considered myself an ally, and I didn't come out until 2 years ago, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I know there's a lot of stigma around that within the community. But
what stigma? What stigma?
I've been judged, or like,
oh, the baby gay.
Or yeah, like all these names and things, and like I've had, people talk about like just not say so nice things, which is crazy because I thought I was gonna come out and it was gonna be like, oh, that community is gonna accept me and and it was not like that.
What are you experiencing? Like what did you experience? Like personally, what was your experience when you came out 2 years ago? Like with the community specifically.
I think I was just around the wrong people, but just like, constantly being called the baby gay, or like the things I would bring up, like just people being like, oh, well, that's not how it is, or it's actually like this, or learning the terms. Like I didn't think I needed to like do all this research. I was just like, yeah, no, I'm gay. Like I identify as like queer, lesbian. At first I feel like, being older, I always identified as pansexual, and even when I was dating cis men. And it wasn't until I was like, you know what, I feel like I would be happier dating a woman. Like not like in terms of sexually, like exploring. I've always been like, no, I think I want to date a woman, and like experience that further and past the sexual level. Like, so once I decided to change, when I had apps, I changed, my everything on there. And, when I was dating, I was identifying as pansexual. And then I came out and shortly after got into a relationship and with another woman. And I started identifying as queer and lesbian, but even within that relationship, there was times where she would question things because I like bring up my past a lot and how I wasn't queer before this, or like just like all this stuff. And like I would have to
Insecurity.
remind her, like, hello, like I've been going to queer spaces since I was younger. Like it's not like it's new, but it's not new, to
Mm-hmm.
me. And so it just like, I don't know, it just really put a damper, and like the people that she would hang out with in this like gold star lesbian labels and things like that in comparison,
Mm-hmm.
it was just like, holy crap, I was not ready for this. Like I thought I was. Like for real, I'm not even gonna cap. And like since being out of that relationship, I feel like I very much have like learned and found my community who are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I love that. Like I love that you're here now. And it's been a lot more comforting. But I mean, I still run into those people that there is that stigma, and like it for me, with my family, like when I came out, like it was actually fine. Like
Yeah.
thankfully, I'm very grateful for that. That was my experience.
What did that look like? What was that conversation? Or did you already have a girlfriend? What was
Well,
that
so
setup?
the person that I got with, it was the day I was going on the date, and I was like, I should probably let my family know. And so I called. I called my grandma first because my grandma's my favorite person in the world, but they also have dementia, and she like also is very hardcore Catholic, like
Okay.
Latina grandma, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was scared. And the first time I said it, she was like, "Oh," and then like I knew I was gonna have to call back and like have more conversations because she was gonna forget because she has
Right.
dementia. But even in that first call, she was just like, "Oh," like that, and then was
Mm-hmm.
just like, do they make you happy? And I was like, I mean, I haven't like fully dated yet, but it does make me happy to like, and she was like, well, then that's all that matters. Like, you still love
Aw.
me? And she's like, yes. And I was like, okay,
Aw.
great. And then I called my mom. My mom was like, okay, simple as that. If you're going on a date, who are you going with? Like, and
Yeah.
then my dad was like, what you do behind closed doors is, you know, it's not,
Yeah.
that's none of my business. I was like, okay, great. And I was just
Easy
like really
enough.
shocked. Yeah. But for other people in my family, not so much. Like I did have some
Mm,
falling outs with other folks in my family, but I'm like, I got my solid,
right.
obviously my sibling, they're non-binary, and then my brother,
Okay.
like they just like it was that I wasn't even worried about that,
Yeah.
But like my stepdad, I mean, he knows, but it was just like whatever. I guess he has his views, but my core group of people are good with it, so
That's
I
what
could,
matters.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
how I was
yeah.
too. As
Oh, I
long
love
as
that.
this group is cool, and I don't know what I would have been like without, but we don't got to talk about it because that wasn't the case. But as long as they were
Right.
cool, like
Yeah.
that's really, you just need that good group, that good support system to get you through. So
Yeah, and I think after my first relationship ending, there was question like, so are you going back to men, or like what is that? And I'm like, no, like
mm,
I'm a lesbian. Like I identify as queer or lesbian. Like I this is it now. Like,
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, there's definitely had to have more conversations, on
yeah,
that. And yeah, I'm very grateful because I know that's not like the norm in the community to have that kind of support system. And I know that I'm very privileged in that way, and very grateful that it couldn't have gone any better, in my
right.
eyes.
Yeah, that's really good that you had that experience. And you said that your grandma's Latina, is
Mhm.
so you're mixed. What are you mixed with?
Yeah, I'm like super mixed. So my mom, and that's another reason why I also grew up in a lot of white spaces, because my mom is white.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so her dad was from Germany, first generation here in the U.S., and then He met my grandma on the East Coast in Jersey, and then they moved to Oklahoma and then Colorado.
Okay.
So yeah, my mom is like super mixed, like German, Italian. I think there's like Polish in there. There's just like a bunch of European countries.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad's side is Mexican, Native American, and Spanish.
Okay. Nice. Do you okay, let me see how to ask this question.
Yeah.
So being a woman of color and having a white mother, how have you navigated that? Like have you had like um have you had difficulties in any way with that
Oh
relationship
my
being
gosh. Absolutely. Difficulties with my relationship with my parents for sure, but also outside of that, like growing up, like especially because my grandma didn't teach my dad and his siblings Spanish. So
mm,
people look at me and they speak Spanish to me, and I don't know Spanish. I don't speak it
mhm,
because also of generational trauma. You know, I think my grandma didn't teach them because that was her first language, and she struggled a lot. You know, and she was also translating for her mom who didn't speak
mhm,
any English. So yeah, I it was difficult growing up also because like people would look at me a one way and then they get to know me more and then and then see my mom and my dad. It doesn't help me either because my dad is like a redhead with freckles. Like my grandma, yeah, my grandma had 5 kids and 2 of them came out with jet black hair and then the other 3 came out with redhead and freckles, you know?
Oh
Like
wow.
yeah, so like that's definitely like I don't know what that is, but like my mom's blonde hair, blue eyes, my dad's like a redhead with freckles, you know, and
Okay.
then I came out the way I came out, and even my sister is we look similar, but she's definitely more lighter complected, like has like hazel, green, brown eyes, and like it's just a little different. And it's crazy what genetics does. Everybody is
Mm,
so different, you know. But and then my younger brother, we have a different dad, so he's blonde hair, blue eyes.
okay.
Just like you know. But growing up in middle school and high school, people would get to know me, and then they'd see my family, and then they'd be like, "Oh, you're not Mexican." And because when I was younger, I just thought I was like white, Mexican, and Native American. You know, like that's what instead of breaking it down by all these different things, you know. So like they'd be like, "You're not Mexican, you don't speak Spanish." Like I was never enough of
Mm,
that. But then like I'd go into these white spaces and I'd be treated different because I am to them, I'm not white. You know? So
yeah.
like growing up it was just like a constant struggle of being mixed and like not being enough for anyone. And that's something I've struggled with. And I always have like issues with that, even as an adult, of like feeling like I'm not enough and like
Mhm.
needing to compensate for that. So yeah, it's been very difficult. And then in regards to my relationship with my mom, you know, we've had different views and we've had to have a lot of conversations because
Mm,
there's just some things that she doesn't understand, especially when I started going to ceremony more because I got invited when I was 21. And then I started going
okay.
every year to ceremony. And then that made my dad want to dive deeper into our roots and learn more and started our journey as a family with that. But which we're still trying to figure out, by the way. It takes
Yeah.
a very long time. But, you know, with
So
my
for
mom,
those that aren't familiar, can you explain what the ceremony is?
there's a lot of different indigenous ceremonies. Um, and the one I go to is like kind of like a lot of different ceremonies in one, and it happens once a year. Um, it's on the reservation in South Dakota with the Rosebud Reservation, the Oglala Lakota Sioux tribe. And I am not Lakota, but I was invited there, and um, a ceremony, it can look like many different things, but it's basically, you know, different ways that different tribes, I don't know, every tribe is so different that I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to, and it's not my tribe, so I don't
Right,
want
right,
to like
right.
speak on that
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah,
But
that's okay.
yeah, I feel like if I could describe it, it's what you would think of when you think of a ceremony. It's where you go to be in community and
Mm-hmm.
to pray and, you know, yeah, I would
Okay.
describe it as that in a broader sense. But
Yeah.
once I started going there was some things that I had to like share with my mom and explain in like what I was finding out about myself, and like, you know, she was learning as we were going, you know, like just about smudging and like things that I've learned that I've taken and practiced, you know. So it's, yeah, it's been very, it's, we've had to have a lot of conversations, especially being an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much when I was younger, because like I think I just like wasn't aware of it, you know,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
as
I
much
yeah.
as I am now.
Mm-hmm. I I hear you, Lex. Like, with that being like around, like I told you, I was from El Dorado and in a lot of white spaces. Now that I'm getting older and I'm just like tapping into like I was oppressing my own community at times, with just like the language and things that were
Mhm.
learned,
Mhm.
like as a young adult. And now that I'm getting older and learning and educating myself on things, it and you bring those tough conversations back to people that haven't learned or wanted to educate themselves because it doesn't pertain to them. Um,
Mhm.
it can be difficult. So I'm
Yes.
wondering, like, what has that bound? Has there been boundaries set? Are you working through that with your mother? Is your mother being receptive of this information? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been for both of us too. It's been a constant unlearning, relearning, unlearning, relearning. And I think, you know, it's very hard sometimes to give people grace, especially when it's like rooted in such like hateful and like colonization, and like these are things that like we're taught. And
Mhm.
so I try to be patient with my mom, but sometimes it can be very, very difficult, you know. And then also realizing like the things I was taught like through her or through my dad, or like
Or through school, your
or through
education.
school, or just the people and the places around me, you know, like yeah, like looking back now, there's so many things that I am like, ooh, that is not good. Even like, you know, like when I just even started out my journey and going to ceremony, like I was so excited about it. And, you know, like I've talked about it in other, with other people and places. And, you know, I'm realizing like, oh, I probably like should not have had some of those conversations. And I didn't realize that till later, because it's like, oh, these are teachings that were that are gifted to me. Like I was brought to that circle and I was brought to that ceremony, and like those aren't my teachings. So like what are
Mhm.
my teachings? And learning like what to share, what not to share. Same thing went into me with my conversations with my mom and with people around me of like, okay, what do I share, what do I not share, and how, and what do I educate on, and what do is like not doing the work for her either. Like
Mhm.
she also needs to do the work as well. Like I can't, you
Yeah.
know, we can't enable people and spoon feed them, but at the same time, if we are not helping educate and guide, then that is also a part of the problem. So it's like navigating, you know, trying to, you know, it's like it's all the lines are fine lines, and it's like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's not linear, and it's not black and white. I mean, in some instances, yes, like
Mhm.
genocide is genocide, and like
Mhm.
that is black and white.
Yeah.
But like there, I think it's like when you're trying to unlearn and relearn things, like there has to be a certain amount of grace that you give in certain instances. And it's like it's finding that, I don't like saying balance anymore, I like to say reciprocal, because
Mhm.
balance, it makes it feel like a competition, or like one side has to be
Yeah.
better than the other, and it's flat. Whereas like if I'm like I'm trying to be more reciprocal with everything, that's a circle. That's
Yeah.
also like something I've learned in indigenous practices is a lot of things are a circle, the circle of life, and like there's no it's there's no start and ending. It's just all one. And like that's the way I really want to live my life. I had to really find reciprocity with my mom of like educating and figuring out like, this back and forth and
Yeah.
unlearning and relearning kind of circle. And I think it's forever
Right.
ongoing.
Definitely going to be, and with it being your mother, it's your mother, so it's like it's definitely gonna be like ongoing. Especially you're gonna
Yes.
get older, you're gonna have children, and what you teach your kids, and
Yes.
well, if you even want kids. But yeah,
Right.
um, so I get it. I understand, but you also just like brought up just like the difficulties of being like a mixed race person just in general, which I think is a huge topic within itself.
Oh yeah.
um so yeah, I understand what you're saying. I feel like you're learning a lot about who you are just like within the last couple years. Just with like your race and your identity, and you mentioned that you came out as pansexual first, but now you're saying like you're queer and lesbian. Do you feel like you did that because of the people that you were around like made you be like, okay, I'm not this way, like I'm just gonna say this, or did you come to that conclusion for yourself?
I definitely came to that conclusion myself. As far like when I identified as pansexual, like I had looked up because I didn't really ever like identify with like the binary, like being bi, and like
Mm-hmm.
because I know that's a part of it, but like I was also open to dating all kinds of people. And so I looked at the acronym a lot, like years and years ago, and I was like, I kind of feel like, I'm attracted to a lot of different types of people. Like it's not just male and female. Yeah, and like so I was like, I feel like this this is how I identify, and that one
Yeah.
felt like I felt like I identified as that. And then when I started dating a woman for the first time, I was like, okay, like I definitely like identify as lesbian. And like I remember towards
At the end of that relationship, like them saying something or her saying something, and I was just like, when am I ever going to be lesbian enough? When I marry you? Like,
Mm.
because it was just like, just all the time, just constant, like, felt like invalidating of, you know. So for me, I just like, I remember once I got out of that relationship and I was like in therapy, was talking to my therapist about it. I was like, I don't even know what to identify as anymore. I mean, I feel like I identify as lesbian, and that's like how I identify, but I also still resonate with queer. I still resonate with pansexual, and my therapist is an amazing LGBTQ indigenous therapist, which was so hard to find, let me just tell you. But, he was like, Lex, you can be all of those. And I was like, what? And he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, you can literally identify as all three of those. And I was like, who said? And like, like, I did not know that. And he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, Lex. And I was like, well, great. Now I feel, yeah, then all three. That's how I identify. But I'm more so like now, since like exploring a lot more and stuff like that, like I still identify as all three, but I would like say usually most of the time I say lesbian. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. I feel bad that you like weren't welcomed the way you should have been a part of the community, because I feel like even now, I came out when I was 18, but I'm like I was told like you're this stud, you're this masculine person, you can't have any femininity at all.
See, what is that, bro? That
Yeah.
like
I think it was just like what I seen on TV,
right,
what I
yeah.
seen around me, and it's all I ever do. So I was like, oh, I dress masculine, so I guess that's what I'm called, a stud or whatnot. So I put this label on me. But now that I'm getting older and I started this podcast, really has made me like tap into more of my femininity and just
Yeah.
be like, I can own it. I don't have to be this like tough macho person just because of what they say. Like that's not who I am. So and I also just think it's like forever changing too. Just like if you're lesbian now, okay. If you change like and you like someone else, like I feel like that's okay. Like you're attracted to someone emotionally, then that just may come about. So I don't like the fact that just like within the community there's these labels and things that you have to fit or you get outcasted or I don't know, like just looked down upon. Did you have any good experiences like when you came out? Like was there like good moments of like yes, like I'm happy to be a part of this space?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I said, more so in the last like 10 months, I feel like I've found my people and I'm like, okay, like this is where it's at, you know, like I was also honestly like this year for Pride, I was like a little sad. I'm not gonna lie, because like this was my like second, or I guess technically my third Pride being out. And I was telling my friend, I was like, man, I had like, it's sad to say this, but I had way more of a better experience when I was like coming to Pride, like not being out, than when I came out. And I was so sad about that. And like, I was like, my friend was like, well, hell no, we're going out at least one night for Pride, you know? So we did. And it was so much fun. And, you
Hey.
know, like we met so many people that night, and that was like, I'm going to remember that night forever. But like, there has been moments here and there where like when I open up to people and like tell them my experience, like they're like very similar reaction to what you have. And like just being able to have those conversations, like those to me are good memories, because we're starting a conversation and just like a seed being planted, it's growing. And bringing these conversations to light, I think, are a big part of like, you know, making everybody aware of it, that like more of these conversations need to happen, so that way we can make change in our community, you know.
And be
um
more welcoming to
yeah,
ourselves. Like we
yeah,
want other people's welcome but can't even welcome other people that are a part of it.
yes, exactly. And so I think like these conversations, as much as they are nerve-wracking or like exciting to have, like I look at them more of a positive thing. Like, you know, you asked me my coming out story, and I still like, even when I'm talking to people and they ask that, I'm like, oh, I'm scared. I don't know what you're gonna react with, you know? I have a little bit of
Yeah.
trauma in that sense, but it's been great ever since, you know. And
Okay.
like I did have a experience with this organization called Coming Out Happy back in December, and they like get together like the LGBTQ community and space and create spaces that like are not based around alcohol and partying. And so I started going to their events and following them, and then they had they were doing their first like LGBTQ entrepreneur like camp, and they gave me a scholarship for as a BIPOC person to go and be a part, and like, because I was not going to be able to do it at the time, and it worked out. And that experience was probably one of the best experiences I've had since coming out, and just like being able to talk to other people and not in a party setting, and like, you know, just having like really great conversations and creating like long lasting relationships, and just like fully feeling accepted. Like,
Yeah.
you
What did you
know,
say that organization was again?
it's called Coming Out Happy. They also have a podcast,
Okay.
and they're really great, and they're very, yeah, I had the best time there. And like they
That's cool. I'm gonna
also
have to
are
check that
very
out.
intentional. Like they did land acknowledgments and stuff, which was like, I don't know, as an Indigenous person, that's like always so great to see. It's a very small part of it, but it's
Yeah.
still nice when that happens.
Yeah, for sure. And what made you like say, okay, I am a part of the community? I don't think I asked that. Like, what were you
Um,
like? Okay, this is me.
I feel like because I obviously identified as pansexual before I dated a woman, but I never included myself within the community, just like as an ally, because I didn't have the experience of like being in a relationship with someone, I guess. And I felt like until I had that experience, I couldn't identify, which now learning all that I've learned, I was like, that I've been queer, like,
Yeah.
like get out of here, but I think for me, that's when I really felt like I was a part, was when I started have experiencing like in my romantic relationships, like having that experience, which, like I said, now after the fact, I'm like, that's that's not the thing that makes you, but
Right.
I think it's been hard because of like what we're taught, and like what I knew at the time. I feel like now I'm so much more educated on things, but also not. Like there's still so much that
So
to
much.
learn and go through and sift through, and like, yeah, which is why I'm also like in therapy and sought out like multiple different therapists since coming out, So yeah,
Yeah, like you said.
it's definitely been a journey.
Yeah, it's good that you found like the therapist that you were looking for too. I know you said it was like very hard, but like it is important for some people to like have that representation
Yeah.
too. Like as a therapist, you don't just want any
It's
therapist.
so
So,
different. It's so different having an indigenous therapist, especially like just with like talking about like culture, or like, like even down to like beliefs, like, just checking in, have you worked with your medicines, like that. Like it's like,
mhm.
oh, I feel so seen, like
Yeah,
it's not just like, did you go and journal? It's like, no, did you
definitely.
use your medicines, like, yeah, I don't know, it's different for sure.
Yeah. What would you tell somebody, Lex, that may be scared to be their authentic self?
Oh, I just got like, I don't want to cry. I'm stuck in it. I might cry. It's good to release, Lex. It's good to release, everyone. That's what I would say. I know. What I would say is to remember who you are. And part of this process of life is remembering who we are. A lot of my work has been about identity and remembering. And that's something I truly believe in, is that we were brought to this earth, and every single thing is what's helping us process and figure out who we are. And so if someone is scared to, embrace themselves, I would just say, like, this is a part of who you are. This is a part of your process, and remembering that, because in what I was taught is, before we are born, we know who our creator is, where we come from, and who we are. And that looks different for every single person. And once we're born into this life, we forget all of that. And so our entire process of life is remembering who our creator is, where we come from, and who we are. And I would just tell them that, and tell them that no matter who you have around you, no matter the pressures of that we face with society every day, like, it's important to remember every single part of who you are, whether we want to embrace it or not, whether we want to acknowledge it to the world or not. I think that is beside itself, but it's like even the work that you do within yourself, and like remembering it for you, you know, and knowing that being able to embrace yourself fully for who you are is really you remembering and bringing yourself back and taking care of yourself at the end of the day. So, yeah, I hope that would help. I don't know. I don't know if that
Yeah.
would help at all, but that is what I would say.
Yeah. I think that's great because I think even if you don't share it, just like within yourself, knowing it, making sure like because you don't have to like tell everyone either. Like just like being your authentic self could look different in different ways, like in different spaces, in different times. Like it could just be uh interchangeable of what that looks like for everybody. So I think that is a good message of just like remembering yourself of just like who you really are and just knowing it. And if you can share that with just one person,
Yeah, exactly.
it does help a little bit. It does help a little bit.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to ask you though, Lex, one last question of what would you like to leave the audience with today?
Ooh, what would I like to leave the audience with today?
Mhm.
Um, I would just like to leave the audience with like reminding of us of our medicine and our power, because us as a community, we are us individually and us as a community, we are so strong and so resilient. And I just want to remind people of their medicine and their power and their resiliency, because within that resiliency, that's where your power lies, that's where your medicine lies. And that's where you can start to find who you truly are and what you're passionate about. And um, I think in remembering that, that'll help you figure out what you want to do in the world and how you want to share yourself. And so I would just say, like I say all the time, is just like remember who you are, embrace who you are. And I think what you said was beautiful. If you can just share that with one person, like that is beautiful, you know, to be able to embrace yourself and to share yourself is like the most beautiful thing we can do. That's what this life is about. I always say people are what make this life worth living. um so yeah, just don't be scared, you know. I'm one to speak because I it's scary out here, I know.
Yeah,
But
I
you know,
think yeah, your story like is it's interesting because I've never heard of someone coming out and then like the community being this way towards them. So I think like
it
that's a
wasn't
good perspective that you.
everybody, let me
Well, yeah,
preface
yeah,
that, but
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
there it was
Just like
not.
your relationship, just like within your relationship though too. Like
Yeah,
that's big. You're with a woman who's telling you you're. I don't know what exactly what she's telling you, but from what I get, it's just like you're not really a part of this community, like the way you say you're a part of the community.
and it's
So
hard because like it wasn't just that, right? There was support and then there wasn't support. There's so much more to it, and there's so much, like nothing is just that one thing. And I don't want to like discredit that relationship because it taught me a lot of things. And you know, it wasn't always all bad, but there were a lot of things where I was like, damn, like this was not what I was expecting, you know? And like,
yeah,
but like there was also great moments too. So, I mean, it's just like everything we're talking about. It's like that reciprocation that sometimes was there and sometimes wasn't. And so it gets confusing like that, you know,
hmm,
in relations with anybody when things aren't like reciprocal and like not all bad or all good all the time, you know? So
yeah,
like, but
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I did, it definitely wasn't the best experience from the get, but have grown a lot and I've learned a lot, and it's definitely gotten a lot better. That's for sure.
yeah. And I know you're not the only one that has dealt with it. I seen a post the other day from another podcast called is it Bad Queer Convo? I think that's what it is. And they were just like talking about how we gotta stop doing that to people that just come out, of just being like, oh, you're baby gay, oh, you don't know this, you don't know that, which is so true. Like, because some of us that are part of the community, we don't know. Like, we're still learning so much.
Yeah,
So yeah, I like I said, you're not the only one that has dealt with this experience. So I think you bring
absolutely.
a good perspective on this platform, and you just being fresh. It's been 2 years, but you're finding yourself and you're learning and you're growing. And I think that's really great that you're tapping into your own words and remembering who you are and knowing who you are. So that's really nice. Um, is there anything that we didn't touch on, part of your story, that you would like to, that you wanted to, that you like I didn't bring up though?
Uh, no, I think, well, I would say like I mentioned a little tiny bit earlier, like a lot of my work has been around identity, and I think that's because of my upbringing of being mixed and remembering who I am. I'm starting to realize as an adult is a part of my legacy that I'm supposed to leave in this world. I created a short film called The Process of Remembering, which was like one of my processes of remembering who I am. And that's out on Vimeo if anybody wants to see it. But I've also like written a song about indigenous like ways and sovereignty and like kind of activism. That song is called Remember Who You Are. And I eventually want to write a children's book about being mixed and for all the youth that are coming out that are mixed, because as the world goes on, we're going to get more and more and more mixed, you know? So that book, I want to write a children's book to help these children understand. And that's going to be called Remember Who You Are. So, like, these are like that, talking about remembering who I am and my identity has really been like a big part of the legacy that I want to leave behind. And it all is coming from my ancestors. It's like that Maya Angelou quote, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And that's really like the legacy I want to leave, is like not just for myself, but just for the people around me, and even giving homage to my ancestors and like leaving the work for the next generation of like helping them work through their process of remembering who they are, you know? So yeah, I just kind of want to make that final connection at the end so folks can know. But yeah.
Yes, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. And I'll make sure to get all of those links for you, so they'll be in the bio, so they can just go down to the description and
Yeah.
give that a click. Um Thank you so much, Lex, for joining me on this podcast today.
No, thank
Your
you.
your story is incredible, and like, I found you on TikTok, slid in the DMs, and look at us. Like,
Look
this
at
could
us.
be you too, guys. This could
Yes.
be you too. Like, please, if you want to be a guest on Kueen Talk, the link will be below. If you have any questions for the guest, the link will be below. So please make sure to do that. Lex, this has been great. I think, like I said, your story is incredible. And when I come to LA, I'm
Yeah.
gonna hit you up,
Yes.
and we're gonna definitely hang out. I'm gonna try some Pilates. I'm gonna
Yeah, we
try some
are.
Pilates.
Yes. Yes,
We're
you
gonna give that
are.
another try. We're gonna see what that's gonna look like, though. You gotta take it easy on me, though.
All
These
right.
knees,
Knees
yeah.
is cracking, you know, knees is
Yes.
cracking.
For sure,
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
thank you. And thank you for creating this space. I know, like, it's definitely needed. Like, there are a lot of podcasts, but not enough podcasts, like, targeting what you're targeting. So, yeah, just
Hmm.
thank you for doing what you do and doing what you do for the community. And also, like, for the folks that are nervous about reaching out, reach out, because, again, we're pushing. We're remembering who we
Yeah.
are. We're facing our fears, right, y'all? So,
Right. Yes. And this was your first time telling your story, or
no,
like
I've
on
been
this
on a
platform?
few
Oh, you
other
on the come out.
podcasts.
Yeah, you said the come.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said the
But yeah,
come
no,
out.
it doesn't matter. Like these
Yeah.
are all ways to find new connections and new people to
Hmm.
hear your story. So I never, yeah, don't be
I
scared,
love
y'all.
it.
Reach
Yeah,
out.
I love it. Tell them, Lex. Well, thank you again, Lex. You guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Kueen Talk. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like button. Let Lex know what you think of her story and make her feel welcomed, you guys. Make Lex feel welcomed in this community. Lex, thank you so much again. I appreciate you. As always, family, friends, strangers, love.
But
Be nice. Oh, thank you, Lex.